So we are going, so we are going to start with this same chart, which we already had from yesterday, and we'll come to our report view if we want to build a chart. So let's just say we want to see a few of our visualizations and just look at how they work. Um, so I'm going to delete these ones that we had here yesterday. So there are different there are different ways to create a visualization. One
Come on,
is Walaikum salam. Oh, okay, I forgot to.
please. I can't see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. I forgot to share my screen. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for calling my attention. So yeah, I was just showing us the same thing we already saw yesterday, which is our data set, which is in a single table. You can see it in our model view here. That everything is in a single table, and then so we'll just go through a little bit of how we build visualizations in Power BI. So on the very simple level, I'm going to delete these files I already have. On a very simple level, there are two ways of building a visualization. The first is to start with the visual itself. So let's say you already have an idea of what you want. Okay, I just want to build a simple bar chart. So yeah, we can come here and select the bar chart. We can see there are different types of bar charts. We have the stacked bar chart, which means that if we are breaking down our data in two different ways, they are going to be stacked on top of each other. And we have it for stacked bar chart. We have column stacked column chart. Then we can have clustered bar charts where each different value will stay side by side. And we have clustered column charts. Then we have the 100% charts. So let's just say we are starting with a bar chart, for example. We can just select any of these just to see how it works. So I'm going to be selecting stacked bar chart. So once you click on the stacked bar chart, what you see is that your chart appears here. I'll make it bigger. Your chart appears here, and you see that the options here appear. So what do you want on your y-axis? What do you want on your x-axis? What do you want for your legends and so on? So we can simply start with maybe product category. Let's product category. Can, so if you want, you can simply select by clicking the checkbox here to select your product category. And we want to see the sales for each product category. When we select sales, it automatically shows us the sum of sales because it knows that 90% of the time we just want to know how much sales that we have. But you can also change the calculation. You can click on this kind of this drop down kind of arrow here. And when you click on it, you can see different calculations that you can make. So if you want to see the average sale, that is on each order, I want to see how much was the average that was sold in each category. You can just select average of sales. Okay, it didn't really change much, but the numbers changed, but the size of the bars did not really change because it's basically the same thing. So you can say, okay, I want to see the minimum sales, I want to see the maximum, and all sorts of other calculations. So when you have numeric value by default, it will give you a sum. And so for those things that can be summed, you can look at it here. You can easily see this sigma sign here that shows that this thing can be summed. That this is a value that we expect you to do calculations on. So very, very simple way of building your visualization, and then you can customize it to your taste. For example, maybe I want to use MMC colors for my charts. So where do we customize? So once you've selected your visual, you have these options here. These are the options for building your visual, just for adding your data. Then if you click here, which is by the right of the of the add data to your visual. Here you have your format your visual. So there are so many customizations, and this is one thing I love about Power BI is Power BI. There are so many customizations that you can make on your visualization, and those customizations they are still doing more and more of them. So I really love that about Power BI. They are still adding more options, and so that's something that you can always explore from time to time. So you can customize your y-axis. So let's say, for example, in my title, I already have some sales by category. So I don't need this information here anymore. Anybody that is looking at this chart already knows that what we have here are the product categories. I can turn off the title, and then um, I can change the colors of the text just for the x-axis, for the just for the y-axis. So I can decide, okay, I want purple for the y-axis, but on the x-axis, I want the data to show using, let's say, I want the values to be yellow. I mean, this doesn't make sense any sense anyway from a visualization point of view, but just to show us what we can do. Okay, sum of sales. I don't need it. I don't need it there. Anybody that's looking at this chart already sees it from the title that it's sum of sales. I can hide it, and then maybe okay, I want my. You can also add data labels. So because maybe it's a bit difficult for someone to just look at this bar and know exactly how much is there, and they have to maybe come to over it. So you can easily just select data labels and you have the amount there. You can also format your data labels. So there are so many ways to format it. So many options. You can choose the position. I want it to be inside of the bar. I want it to be outside of the bar. I want it to be the center of the bar. Let's leave it in the center, for example. You can format the value, make the text bigger, maybe change the color to black. Uh, what else? You want to display units. I don't want it to be showing 0 point something million. Let it show me in thousands. So I know okay, it's 730K. So you can even add a picture in the background of our chart. So there are actually so many customizations. We can even customize the bars. We can decide, okay, we want to use orange color for all of our bars, or even if you want to choose a different color for each bar, you can do that. Just come under categories, select, and you say, okay, technology. We want technology to always be blue, for example, and then we want furniture to always be brown. I can't find brown here. And office supplies, we want it to always be green. It's green. Okay. Okay, I want it to be this color. So those are the kind of options that you can have in Power BI. So and under the options, we have the visual options, which focus on the visual, and we have the general options, which focus on the general properties of the visualization. Like we can choose to turn off the title. We actually need the title, so we can also edit the title and say, okay, sales by category instead of sum of sales by category. Or maybe in our company, they prefer to use word revenue. Just okay, revenue by category. You can even change the font type. Let me like this at the default font. I prefer Sego UI. You can also make a bold. You can have a subtitle. And something even more interesting is that for each of these titles and subtitles, you can choose to write a function for it instead of simply typing in a title. So that can make it dynamic. That way, if you are maybe as somebody selects something or somebody changes something, you also want the data to change. So that's something very simple, very straightforward that you can do with your visualization. Now, these visualization options will change depending on the chart that you choose. So, for example, if I choose, okay, I want to have a donuts chart this time. So, yeah, I showed us one method of creating a visualization, which is coming here and just selecting a visualization type. The other method we can also use is first we click on the empty side of the screen so that nothing is selected, and then you just go to the column that you actually want to show. Let's say I want to show the sales by state. Okay, I think I showed us that yesterday. You can just choose state, and you can see it automatically chooses the type of visual for us. And then maybe we also want the sum of sales. So like that. So this way you have your visualization. Let me make it bigger. So, and you can see the size of the cycle is like the amount of sales for
And I'm
each.
sorry to interrupt you. How did you get the map again?
So, what I simply did was that I deselected everything, click on the empty side of the screen, then simply come and select the the value you want. That's the field you want to build your visual on. And Power BI will automatically choose the type of visualization for you.
All right, thank you.
So make it bigger, for example, and then I choose sum of sales. So this automatically shows us the size of the cycle is the sales. So and when you come here and you look at this visualization, well, you can easily see um, that our options have changed. The options are different from the options that we had for our bar chart. And so we can also decide to maybe put, okay, we only have states, we don't have country here. So maybe we just have states. Maybe we want to show, we want to put a legend based on the size of the cycles, for example. This doesn't make any sense actually. So I'm just going to remove it. And then we can also come here in the same way, we can format the visual. You can see that the options for the maps are actually fewer than those that we had for the bars. So we can choose to make it a heat map, maybe instead of showing the size of circles, we want to see it in form of a heat map. You can change the style. I think we have to change the chart type if we want it to be a heat map style. Yeah, so we can change this here. Let's say I want it to be, there are different types of maps. We have, this one is just a normal map, which can show us the map even if we don't have any, even if we don't put any sum of sales there. But we have the field map, which depends on the amount of sales. So let's use that instead. And then we can come to our formatting. Let's see, we have this, and then I want sum of sales. But this doesn't work. The shape map that we actually want. Then we have some sales. Yeah, I think this is what we want. But this is not working properly. Probably we need to come to our modeling and show that our states are a geographical location. So remember I was showing us this yesterday in the data model that we can show the kind of data category. So you can see that it has recognized the names of the states as a location. So it's possible for us to actually select and show that, okay, this is actually a state or this if this is a country or anything it is. So what I simply did, how I got here, I came here to the model view, which we have seen before, and I selected state, and then I show that the data category is that this state is actually a state, it's a geographical location. So I want Power BI to recognize it as a geographical location. We can also do the same to our postal codes, that we want it to show that, we want Power BI to recognize it that it's actually a postal code. So now we come to our report view. I would have, okay, so we recreate this. So this is showing us the map of the US instead of the map of Nigeria. So let's try again. And for some reason it doesn't work. Okay, so we just move on. I mean, I just wanted to show us different ways of creating a chart. And personally, I would actually even prefer to use a bar chart where we can see everything quite more straightforward. So that's just the part I wanted to just to show us simply the ways of creating a chart. Now we will go to our data modeling, and I'll keep this open so because there's something I want to show us later on. But we are going to create a new file, a new report, and we want to import the new data set. That's the second, the one I just shared earlier today. I will share it in the comment box for those of us that might not have seen WhatsApp.
Please, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, please, how did you where did you click on to get change data visual? Because I can't see it on my own end.
Where did I click onto?
Where did you click on to change data visual? Where you were able to um
Okay,
yes.
simply once you're in a position where your data is selected, like this, on already in this visualization, you just come to this visualization and select another type. So if I click on any other type, it will automatically change to that type.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So I've shared the new data set with us. So what we will notice in this data set, so now let's import it into our new report. So we are back here where we started yesterday. You can simply just select import data from Excel. And we have our data here, our data set here. So I just select and I open. So when you are here, you have the option to select which sheets you want to import into your data set, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can leave the last one out, so we don't want to import the last one. We only want to import these sheets. So the sheets you want to import, you can actually select them when you're loading your data set, and you can see a quick preview of how your data will look like when you import it. So I'm going to click on transform data. So what we notice is that in this data set, unlike the original one that we had, where we had every single thing on a single table, here we have different tables for different things. We have one table for customer, we have one table for date, we have one table for location, we have one table for products, we have one table for staff, and we have one table for sales. So these tables you can see by the prefix. It's something we call a dimension table and a fact table. So these first five are called dimension tables, and this is called a fact table. So what is a dimension table and what is a fact table? Um, just a very simple definition of a fact table is the events, facts are events that we collect data for. So usually it answers the questions, what happened? So what are facts? In our situation, the facts, like when we are calculating, what do we want? We want to calculate our sales data. So our facts are actually sales in our situation. So if we look at this, our facts table here, we have a few facts. Our facts here are sales, quantity, discount, profit. So if the business is asking a question, oh, what happened? Did we make a profit? Oh, okay, we made a profit. Oh, okay, we made a sale. Oh, okay, we had this amount of quantity. We sold this amount of items. So that is those are facts. Those are the events that actually happen, that actually drive a business forward. So, or in the case of maybe I'll bring the same example as I had yesterday, like Facebook. So, what are the things that happens on Facebook? Somebody clicked a post. So, clicks would be facts. Somebody viewed a video. A view is what is a fact. Maybe on YouTube, we are counting YouTube views. Somebody subscribed to a channel. That's a fact. Somebody followed another page on Twitter. That is a fact. So those are the things we record in the facts table. Dimensions, on the other hand, are the information that we collect about a fact. So they answer the questions about the circumstances surrounding the fact. So like where did it happen? How did it happen? Who did it? So basically answering any question about the fact. So when we say, okay, oh, we made a sale. When did we make the sale? We made it on the 1st of January. So on the 1st of January is what? It's a dimension, which is that's why we have a dimension table for dates. Okay. It happened on the 1st of January. That's the dimension. Who bought the product? It was maybe Fatima Bodonri bought the product. That is the person that is involved in that transaction. Okay, who made the sale? Our regional sale manager in Lagos, Shegun Silva, was the person that made the sale. What did he sell? He sold a book. He sold a chair. So these are the things that are surrounding the facts itself. So these things are the what are the dimensions, and well, the facts are the things that actually happened. So usually, one thing, the reason why we make the distinction between dimensions and facts is because dimensions tend to be fixed in time. So if I have a dimension, if my name is Mubarak today, when I come back tomorrow, my name will still be Mubarak. But if I bought an item today, I may buy a different item tomorrow, or I may buy a different amount of the same item tomorrow. So so usually we are able to anticipate exactly what are the informations that we have for a dimension, while facts change all the time. So the facts is really what we are interested in, but we need the information surrounding the facts, and that is why we have all of the all of the dimensions. So we are going to load this data into our data model. But before we load it into Power BI, what we want to simply quickly do is, like I said yesterday, when we first import our data, we examine it and we look at the data type. And we can see here, okay, everything here is data type of everything here is text. So now we're in the customer table. So we are going to take each of the tables. We'll go through them one by one, which is you can see that the format, the date format here um, is text. You can see that okay, all of the data, all the data that was imported are valid, so we don't have any problems here, and we can see the data distribution. So now this data distribution, this values distribution, it also becomes very important now that we are importing data from different sources. Why? Because on each table, we should have one column that is like this, that has equal number of distinct and unique values, which is every row in this data set is unique. Each customer name should appear only once, for example. But that's why we had to create a customer ID because it's possible that what if two customers actually have the same name? So we create a unique customer ID that uniquely identifies each customer. So that way, even if two customers have the same name, they can have different ID. And we can see it here that the number of distinct names is actually different. Unlike here, where we have 791 distinct names, which is here we have distinct customer IDs. Here we actually have fewer distinct names um, because there are some customers that are repeated. So, but now I think there is actually another problem here, which is that we have 1,000 rows, but only 791 distinct names. So that means that okay, but that doesn't make any sense. If 790, if the names are 7, if they are, okay, that means we don't have up to 1,000 rows in this table. Okay, we have a total of 791 rows because, and we can see that the number, that each customer ID appears only once. That's exactly what we expect. So I will explain that further when we get into the data modeling proper. So I will explain more the importance of having this uniqueness. But when we get to data modeling view, you won't see this distinct and unique. And that's why I'm explaining it now. So we'll get into that once we get into data modeling. But for now, we just want to transform our data and load it into the data set. So we can see that here we have column 1, column 2, column 3, but the first row here says customer ID, customer name, segment. So like I explained to us yesterday, for the data set we used yesterday, it was pretty straightforward. Automatically, Power BI recognized that the first row was a was supposed to be the header for the data set, but here it didn't recognize it. So we have to do it ourselves. So we can simply come to this home tab. To come up here by the right, we can see use first row as headers. So we are going to simply do that, and automatically our first rows become the headers. Now we have customer ID, customer name, segment. So you can see the importance of actually looking at our data set first before loading it directly into Power BI. I can simply change the name of this table from dim customer to customer, simply customer, which is simpler. So we can see our order date. Everything here is unique. The data is valid, the data type is correct, so nothing to do here, but we can rename it into date. We have our location, everything here is correct, the data types are actually correct, and we have our state, which gives us 37 distinct, 37 unique. We have postal code, 37 distinct, 37 unique. So that's fine. But like we said yesterday, we don't really need country because we have a single data point here, which is all Nigeria. So it doesn't give us any new information. So we can also delete country. We can rename this into location. I hope I'm not too fast. Hope we are able to follow.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then now we go to product table. I will have different information about the product. So we have product ID, product category. We can see that here also, Power BI did not automatically recognize the first row. So we come here again and we select use first row as header, and our data types are correct. Everything is valid. We can rename this also into product.
Sir, please, should we also rename our own?
Yeah, you can follow along if you are comfortable following along, you can do that. But if it's a bit if it's too much for you, you can focus on just watching and then you can reproduce on your own after the class.
No, I'm going as well as you. I'm just asking if we should rename it as well in our own sheets.
Yes. You should rename it. Yes. So now we come to staff. We can see the same thing here. Sales
Sorry,
manager.
sir.
Yeah.
So for the location, the postal code, we did not change the formatting.
Oh, okay. Okay, we have it as numeric. Yes, we can actually change it to text because I don't want it to recognize it as numbers. Yes, thank you for that. So we have products. We have staff here. Here we have the name of our staffs and which region they belong to. We can also see here we have column one, column two. So we use first two as headers. The name, so just staff. And then finally here we have sales. So you can look at each of the column. We have the row ID, which is unique, yes. We have the order ID, the order date. So actually we don't really need this row ID here. So I will actually remove, so I will remove it. Why don't we need it? Because we don't really need to have something unique in our fact table. It's very important for our dimension table that we must have a particular value that all the values are distinct and all the values are unique for our dimension tables. So I'll go back to each dimension table just to show us that we have something like that. Here in customer ID, we have everything is distinct and everything is unique. Under date, everything is distinct, everything is unique. Under location, both our state and our postal code are all distinct and they are all unique. Under product, we have the product ID, which is all distinct and all unique. Under staff, okay, all the sales manager names are distinct and unique. Same with the region. So we have the same thing here in our fact table. But as far as Power BI is concerned, we don't really need it. So I'm going to just delete it. And then we look at other things, okay. Order ID, order date, delivery mode, all the data types, seem correct. Okay, we chose to use text for our postal code. I think it would actually work even if we leave it as whole numbers, but we can change it to text. Then we have our product ID, sales, quantity, discount, profit. So that's good. And then we can rename this to sales. So the only change we made on this sales table was to change our postal code to text. And then, okay, we deleted the row ID because we don't actually need it. So now we are going to close and apply. Yes, the link I sent on the here in the chat is the same link that we have in the WhatsApp group chat. So now our data is loading, and now we are going to go to the model view where we actually build our model, our data model. So today we are really starting with our focus on data modeling. So this is what we call a star schema. How does a star schema work? A star schema has a fact table right in the middle, which is sales, and then we have our dimension tables all around. So I'm going to remove this staff table is actually not part of our star schema, and I'll explain why. But let me just leave it here. And then we have our date. So I want to create a relationship between the date table and the sales table. So I pick up this other date and then I drag it on top of the other date here. So you can see the table we are starting from. So Power BI is going to show us a pop-up on how we want to define our relationship, which shows us the table we are coming from, the table we are connecting to, and on which column are we joining it. You can see that other date is highlighted in both cases, which is because that's the table that's the column that is the same in both tables. Then we have our cardinality, which is called one to many. So anytime we are building a relationship between two tables in Power BI, which is also the same thing that we have when it comes to SQL or any database system. So this understanding this concept is actually not unique to Power BI. We have it on any database system that we have. So but Power BI just adopted it. It's this idea of one-to-one relationship, many-to-one relationship, one-to-many relationship, and many-to-many relationship. So ideally, in all scenarios, if we are creating a star schema, we want to always have a one-to-many relationship. I'll repeat again. In any scenario in Power BI, you want to always and always have a one-to-many relationship. The other situation you may find yourself in is to have a many-to-many relationship. Now, there are situations where it can actually be necessary for you to have a many-to-many relationship, but it is very, very rare. In 99% of situations, you want to have a one-to-many relationship. Why? Because if you have a many-to-many relationship, it can mess up your charts. You're going to be, it can mess up your numbers, your calculations, your DAX. It can really mess it up. And that's the reason why we're also talking about star schema in the first place. Because Power BI, the way it has been designed at the back end, the way the calculations have been designed, it's designed to work optimally with a star schema. So, and if it's working with a star schema, then you also want a one-to-many relationship. What is a one-to-many relationship? A one-to-many relationship means that on one of your tables, each value appears only once, and that is your dimension table. So if you can, that's why I was going through each table doing in Power Query to show us that there is one column where everything is unique, where everything appears only once. So the reason why we have that is for the sake of creating a relationship with the sales table. So if we look at it, so I will go through the relationships between each of the table and our sales table again later on. So, but in this particular case, we have order date, and we must also have our order date in our sales table, and it will have a one-to-many relationship. So, and cross filter direction, we want it to be single. We could actually make it both two, but that would actually complicate things the same way a many-to-many relationship will complicate things. So, when we are creating a relationship between two tables, We want one table where the values are unique for that column. Then we want our fact table where we have that same column exists in our fact table, but the values can appear multiple times in our fact table. And because it appears only once on this table and many times on this table, this relationship is called a one-to-many relationship. We want our cross filter direction to be single and we want our relationship to be active. So we are going to save. So now we have what we call a star schema apart from our staff table. So what is it? So why is our staff table not part of our star schema? Because in a star schema we have a single fact table and all dimension tables are only one step away from our fact table. I'll repeat that again. We have a single fact table and all our dimensions are only one step away from our fact table. So based on that, can somebody tell us why our staff table is not part of our star schema? Why this table is not part of the star schema?
Because it's not directly connected to sales table.
Exactly. Because it's not directly connected to the sales table. It's connected to the sales table through location. So when we have this kind of situation, it's called a snowflake schema. So those are the two major types of schema. Okay, I can say we have three major types of schema. One is a single flat table, which is what we had yesterday, where we had all our data sets in a single table. So that's one. The second is star schema, where everything is just one step away um, from the sales table. Then we have a snowflake schema. A snowflake schema, I'm not going to go deep into it, but just for us to identify it, is the fact that there are some dimension tables that are more than one step away from our fact table. So usually the idea of a snowflake schema is that in every dimension table, we want every item to appear just once. So now we go back to our Power Query, we click on transform data. So for example, we have customer ID, everything appears only once. We have customer name which is attached to the customer ID. We cannot actually separate customer name and customer ID. But what we would have if we wanted to create maybe a snowflake schema, we would look at this segment and we say, oh, segment appears multiple times. We don't want it to appear several times. We want it to appear only once. So we'll create a new table and call it segments table and then create a relationship between segments table and customer table. So on our segments table, each segment will appear exactly only once. So that would be a snowflake schema. But we will not be able to connect our segment directly with the sales. We would have to connect it to customer and then connect customer to sales. So that's a snowflake schema. So in some databases, that is the standard. That is called, it's what we call normalization. So that's not the topic for today. That's more of a topic for SQL. When we're talking about SQL and databases, then we can talk about normalization in a more detailed manner. But here we are not talking much about normalization. We don't need to normalize our data. All we need is to have a star schema. So now what we are going to do is that we want to enforce our star schema. We don't want staff table to be two steps away from the location table. Sorry, from the sales table. So I will go back to our model view just to show us what we have now. Our staff is two steps away from the sales table. It has to go through location before it comes to sales. So does anybody have any ideas how we can solve this problem? Anybody? Just an idea. You may not know how to do it exactly in Power BI, but just an idea of okay, what can we do to ensure that the staff table is just one step away from our sales table?
I think you need to first connect it from the application.
Huh?
Maybe perhaps you need to first connect it from the location.
Exactly. So here we can see that there's a relationship between our sales table and location table. So we can look at the relationship here. The relationship is through the region. So the fact that we have a relationship through the region, it means that we can also bring everything in this staff table, we can bring it into our location table. So that's what we are going to do. Now, between a one-to-many relationship and a many-to-one relationship, there's really no difference between many-to-one and one-to-many. The only difference is that which table did we put on top. So if we put our staff table up here, uh, let's say I have location down here, and then I have staff up here. It's going to show us one to many. Okay, it's not showing us. There's already a relationship. It doesn't want us to create anyone. So, but basically, the difference between one to many relationship and many to one is which one did you put on top, which one did you put down. So, what we want to do now is that we want to bring all the information in our staff table. We want to bring it into our location table. So, how do we do that? We go back to our transform data, and then we select our location table. Then we control click on our staff table. We don't even need to do that. We can simply select our location table. Then we come up here and you see what we call merge queries. Now, these are two operations in Power Query. We have merge queries and we have append queries. A merging query is simply like doing a join in SQL. I don't know if some of us know SQL here, but if you don't know, we are going to just learn about how to merge a query. So, but okay, we know VLOOKUP in Excel, right?
Yes.
Okay, so when we do a merge query, so when we do a merge query, what we are simply trying to do is it's almost as if we are doing a kind of a VLOOKUP on another table. So let's go through merging a query. So we want to merge our location table and our staff table because we don't want this staff table, we don't want it to exist anymore. It's too far from our sales table and it's messing up our staff schema. So we select location and then we select staff. And then we tell Power BI where there is a relationship between the two tables. So we just select region and then we select region. And it's showing us that, okay, yes, there is a match between all of the tables. And then we have the type of join, which is very simple and straightforward. It's showing us that all from first, matching from second. I'm not going to go into joins because joins can be very, very confusing from experience. I actually think it's a simple concept, but I found out that it can be a bit difficult to explain and it can need a lot of examples for us to understand it and move forward with it. So, and I don't want us to spend too much time on joins because it's more of a database and SQL concept than a Power BI concept. So hopefully, when we are having an SQL class, we can actually sit down and spend maybe 30 minutes on talking about just joins because one of the most important concepts you can learn as a data analyst. So, but basically what this join is doing is that it's we're doing a VLOOKUP using location to say to our sales table. And if we have done a VLOOKUP before, we know that if we are doing a VLOOKUP on one column and we are looking on another table, if the value does not exist in our original data set, it's going to throw an error. And that's why Power BI is doing that. That's why Power BI is looking at this for us. It's looking at the selection and looking at it that does this thing exist in, does everything exist in the second table? So it's saying, okay, yeah, it matches everything. So we're not going to have any errors. Although even if it doesn't match, it's not like we're going to have errors. We're not still going to have errors. It's still going to work. Just that for rows where there is nothing matching, it will become blank. But in this case, we don't have any problems. So we can easily just do a VLOOKUP on the staff table. So we are going to click on OK. And we see that once we look at in our location table, we now have a new column called staff. And Power BI is telling us that this is a table. So it's almost as if we picked up the staff table and we put it inside the location table. Now, how does that work when they don't have the same number of rows? It works like a VLOOKUP. We told Power BI already that there's a relationship based on region between location and staff. So Power BI is basically doing a VLOOKUP based on region and then looking up at the and checking the staff name that matches that region on the staff table. So now that we have this, we are going to click on this arrow by the top right here on this staff. And now it gives us the options to choose which columns we want to bring into location. There are only two columns on the staff table, which is sales manager and region. If we bring in region, it's just going to bring us the same column that we already have on the staff table, on the location table, sorry. So we can you can deselect the region. We leave expand selected. Yes, we want to just expand it. Instead of showing table, we want to show our sales managers' names. Use original column name as prefix. No, we don't want that. So we are going to deselect that too. So the only thing that is selected here is sales manager and expand. Then we click on OK. And just like that, it brings in all our sales managers into the location table. So if you look at it, Chukwemeka Chimezie is our sales manager for Southeast region. If we go to our staff table, we found that that is correct. Chukwemeka Chimezie is in Southeast. And we have maybe Shegun Silva for Lagos, Lekon Lawal for Southwest. If we come back to our location table, we see the same thing. That Lekon Lawal, every row where there is Southwest, we are going to have Lekon Lawal's name and so on. So we have that for everybody. So we have successfully merged our staff table into our location table. So now we don't need our staff table into our model in our model anymore. So there's something we can do in Power Query so that we don't bother importing information that we don't need. We come to our staff, we right click, you can see enable load and include in report refresh. They are both ticked. Include in report refresh means that if somebody changes something on that Excel sheet and we refresh here and we click on refresh in our Power Query, every change that happened in that Excel sheet is going to be refreshed. So, but if we unclick it, then this column, this table will not be refreshed. But that doesn't really matter. What we just really need is that we don't want to load it into Power BI anymore because we don't need it anymore. Everything we need here is already in our location table. So we deselect enable load. Okay, possible data loss warning. Disabling load will remove the proof from the report, and any visuals that uses columns will be broken. Yeah, continue. We don't have a problem with that. So you can see that now our staff table is showing in X. So it means this shows us that it has been deselected. So now when we close and apply, and we come back into our BI, we no longer have our staff table, and our location table now includes our sales manager. So are we together up to this point?
Yes.
Now we have a proper star schema. There are two reasons why we need a proper star schema in Power BI. Number one is model size. So the size of our model will affect how fast our report is. If somebody is using our report, how easily do they move around? How fast does Power BI do the calculations? When you click on a filter, do you have to wait for some time before it actually loads, or does it react instantly? All of those things are based on our model size. And if we have a flat table, our model size is going to be much bigger. Let's say, for example, we have a product. Let's go and look at our data again. Okay, we could actually do that in the table view. Yeah. So we have a product. It's called Bush Birmingham, whatever, 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 whatever. Every time we sell this product will always have the same subcategory. It will always have the same category. It will always have the same product ID. We need this information. But if you put it in our sales table, if we sell that product 1 million times, it's going to appear 1 million times in this sales table. The category is going to appear 1 million times. The subcategory will appear 1 million times, even though it is exactly the same information, which is what happened when we had a single flat table. Let me go back to that data model in another sheet. You don't have to follow along at this point. So that may not matter much when we have a very small data model like this, actually, because our data is actually quite small, just 8,000 rows. But let me see if there's anything that is repeated here. There's not a lot of repeated items. But we can see that as far as maybe subcategories are concerned, can we order here? No, we can't sort. Let me do it through the table view. Let's do this through the table view. And then we can see every time we have paper, what happens? The subcategory will always be paper and the category will always be office supplies. We will never have a subcategory of paper under furniture. So that relationship is fixed. It will always be like that. So instead of repeating this same information 2,000 times, or how many thousand times it actually appears here, by breaking up our data into dimensions and fact tables, and I'm back to the sheet we are all working on. By breaking into dimensions and facts tables, we ensure that in our dimension table, which is products in this particular case, each item, each product will appear only once. So each product with its subcategory, with its category, everything will appear, each time it will appear only once. But if we leave it directly like that in the sales table, each time the product appears, we are going to be having 3 good columns that are going to be appearing um, separately, and that can increase our model size like exponentially. If you can remember what we were talking about cardinality yesterday, which is the size of the table. So the table can become very big. So, and the number of columns, Power BI stores data in what we call a columnar format, which means that if we have more rows in our data set does not become much bigger. But if we have unnecessary columns in our data set, it's going to help out, it's going to make our data set get bigger a lot. So we try to reduce that um, by using SAS schema. And then the second reason why this is important is for our DAX. So in some cases when we are working on DAX, we are going to DAX can be really difficult. I'm not trying to scare us, but I mean it's something that is actually well known in the Power BI space that DAX is difficult. Why is DAX difficult? The major reason why DAX is difficult is that many times you can't. It's not like Excel where when you are doing your calculation you can see what's going on immediately. And sometimes, and our DAX is highly dependent on our relationships. It's very dependent on our model relationships. So if maybe you're working on DAX and you run into an error in your DAX, or maybe your DAX is giving you numbers that are not making sense. If you copy that DAX code and send it to somebody that, can you tell me what is wrong with this DAX? The person may not be able to tell you what is wrong unless they see your data model. So your DAX is highly dependent on your data model. So if you want your DAX to behave properly, usually you need to have a star schema. If you use a normal flat table schema, you may run into issues. I will show us an example of a function I tried to do yesterday on our flat table. I think I have it here. So I think we are slowly going into DAX now, which is actually going to be the next step anyway, right after we finish our modeling. So I just want to show us something that shows us the importance of task schema. So I have this, okay, we'll come back to this later. I think we can come back to it later, because if I try to explain it now, we are going to it can be confusing since I've not yet introduced us to DAX. So, but I think those are the major two reasons why we need a star schema. One is that it makes our model smaller and lighter, and the second is that it makes our DAX function properly. Let me see if we have any questions. Okay, please, if the distinct and unique info displayed by the default, and if distinct and unique did not agree, what does that mean? I don't know, Lukman, do you still have this question or is it already clear?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
It has not been clear. I just sent the question.
Okay. So we explained yesterday that distinct means that what are the number of different values we have in this column. So if you look at category, we have only two categories, furniture and office supplies. Those are two distinct values. Unique values tell us how many values appear only once on this table. So if you look at our category table, we have so many subcategories that are under furniture. So it's not possible for furniture to appear only once. It's going to appear each time we have any subcategory that belongs to furniture. So that is why we have zero unique values under this table, under this column. So a unique value means that that value appears only once. So the only time that your distinct and your unique has to agree is in your column, is in this column which is called a primary key. I don't think I used that term earlier. So we have this column which is called a primary key. On every dimension table, we must have what we call a primary key. That primary key, in that primary key, no value must be repeated. Everything must appear only once. Why? Because we need to use it to create a relationship which is called a one-to-many relationship. And by definition, a one-to-many relationship means that this value appears only once in our dimension table. So if the value appears only once, if each value appears only once in our dimension table, then our distinct and our unique are going to be equal. So the only time that the two values must be equal is for our primary key table. So we can see that customer ID on our customer table has the same number of distinct and unique. On our date table, our date has the same thing. On our location table, we have the same thing on state and postal code. On our product, we have it on product ID. And all of these columns where we have the same distinct and unique, we are going to have them here in our facts table because that is what we use to create the relationship. So the relationship is basically like as if when we are creating our visual in Power BI, if we want to put customer name, we don't have customer name on our sales table. But because we have customer ID, Power BI can do a sort of like a VLOOKUP more or less, can do a VLOOKUP on our customer name and use that customer name in our visualization. So we have a one column which we use for our relationships, which appears in our facts table, but other columns from dimension table will not show. So you can see that these are the columns that we use for our relationships. If we look at in our sales table, the relationship between our customer ID, customer and sales is based on what? Is based on customer ID. You can see that customer ID is highlighted. On products table, the relationship is based on product ID. On date, it's based on date. And on location, it's based on our postal code. Is it clear?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So now we will be going into our reports
Hello,
view.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, just please, how did we get to this relationship table? This
Uh,
relationship. So,
we simply loaded our data from Power Query and we brought it in. It's in the data set that I just shared with us today. And that's why we have each of our dimension tables in a different sheet, which are different tables. So if you were with us from the beginning, you would have followed us along until we got to this point. If you were not with us, then just enjoy the flow and then you can watch the recording later on.
that's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. So now we have our model. Our model is ready. Everything is a star schema. And then we can go to our reports view to start creating reports. But just before we do that, we want to ensure that everything is fine with our model. So we're going to look in here. So now, if you notice something, it is that the fact that we have these columns that we use to create relationships, this customer ID, we have customer ID here, we have customer ID here. These columns are going to appear twice in our model. Let's go to our report view. They're going to be appearing twice. So we don't need them to appear twice, right? So one thing we are going to do is that we are going to come to in our model view, we will decide what to show and what not to show. Once you highlight any column here, you can see this I button. So we can select to hide it. So we can hide our customer ID. So we don't need it, especially from the sales table, which is our facts table. We don't need any of the dimensions from our facts table. We want to always pick our dimensions from these dimension tables so that our relationships will always make sense. So we come here, we hide our customer ID, we hide the other data that is coming from the date table that's here. We can hide our order ID. Oh, okay, no, okay. Our order ID belongs to the sales table, so we can leave it. We can hide our postal code, which is coming from the location. We can hide our product ID, which is coming from the product table. So we can leave this. So this way, we have only the ones that are coming from from each of our dimension tables. Now we can go to our model view and we can create very simple visualizations. Let's say we want to see our best customers. Like I said before, we can create visualizations in two ways, either by selecting the visualization type first or by selecting the column we are interested in. So I can pick up customer name and put it here. And I can put in our sales. And then we have the sum of sales. We can always order our data to, okay, we want to see sum of sales from the highest to the lowest. So we can come to the top of this column. You can see this arrow pointing up shows that the data is in an ascending order. So that's why we can see that everything is starting from A here. And here we want our sum of sales to show in descending order. So we are going to click on it, and automatically Power BI sorts it from our highest buying customer to the lowest. So if we wish, we could actually just change this to a bar chart, for example, just to make it look better. We just simply come to our visualizations area. You see that our table is still selected, and when we select this, it becomes a bar chart. So yeah, that's something very simple and straightforward. But now we are going to be going into DAX. So what is DAX? There's nothing to be scared about DAX since we already have our star schema model. So nothing to really be scared of. I'm not going to go too much into DAX, but I will just highlight the very basic concepts, which are three concepts that we need to know in DAX. I'll create a text box to type our class notes because I didn't include this in the presentation. We have three types of calculation we can do in Power BI. We can create what we call measures. We can create what we call calculated columns. And we can create what we call calculated tables. Now I will start from calculated tables. Calculated tables, what calculated tables means is that we can simply create another table inside the DAX itself. So we can write some formulas that will help us create a table using DAX. So DAX is actually a very simple language. It's a lot like our Excel formulas that we already know. But the major difference is that unlike our Excel formulas that work in cells, our DAX formulas are going to be working in terms of columns, which is something I emphasized also yesterday, that a major difference when we are moving from Excel to Power BI is the fact that Excel works with cells. We are writing our formulas, we're doing everything inside a single cell. But anything we are doing in Power BI, we are working with an entire column. So I'm going to show us an example of a very common calculated table that we are going to be using, which is called, there is a formula in DAX that is called that is called a calendar table. So why do we need a calendar table? Because, okay, I don't want to go into details of why we need a calendar table, but one thing that we have in Power BI that is very common is is that, and it's recommended as a best practice, is to always create your own calendar table. So, so people will advise you that you shouldn't use the automatic calendar calculation in Power BI because it can actually be quite confusing to use the default calendar table. For very basic visualizations like what we are doing today, you can simply just use what you have under your dates, but you see that I separated dates into a separate column. So we are going to create what we call a calendar table. So I'm going to just create it now. I will come up here under home, and then I'll create a new measure. So it says write a DAX expression that calculates a value from your data. So I want to create a calendar table, and there is a function in Power BI for that. So once you click on new measure, you can see the formula bar here appears. And I'm going to name my measure. What is the name of my measure? The name is a calendar, and I'm just going to type in the formula, which is calendar auto. So I can create my, so I just close the brackets. I don't need to add anything. So once I type calendar auto, okay, no, I need it as a new table. Sorry about that. Nope, 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 not like that. Okay, so I was supposed to come here under table tools. So once you select a particular table, you select any table, and then you come under table tools, and you select new table. So I want a new table called a calendar. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Click on calendar auto, close it, and press enter. And now we have a new table called a calendar table. What's the usefulness of calendar table? The major usefulness of a calendar table is that when we are creating what we call time intelligence functions in Power BI, for example, a very common situation you are going to have in a business scenario is that we want to compare the sales that we have this year to the sales that we have last year, maybe for a particular customer. So instead of just showing year and whatever, we're like, okay, no, we want to see for any particular customer, if I select 2022 data, I want to see both 2022 sales and how much that person bought in 2022 and how much that person bought in 2021. So that's maybe you're calculating like a year on year sales or sale or growth. So all of these things that change over time, they are called time intelligence functions in Power BI. And to be able to do time intelligence, you need to have a calendar table. Why? Because if you use your native date table, the problem is that if you use the date column that comes from your data set, there is a possibility that we don't have data for every single day of the year. And for your time intelligence to work properly, you need to actually have a date for every single day of the year. And this is what a calendar table does. A calendar table generates, so it's basic. So by using the calendar auto function, it's it does a basic it looks at your data set. It looks at the smallest date in your data set and the biggest date in your data set, and it creates a date table that contains all the dates in that range. Because having all the dates in that range in your date table is completely necessary for your time intelligence functions to work properly. If you just use dates, the same way it came from your data set. Let's say, for example, maybe your company does not open on weekends. So you're not going to have any other dates that is going to be during the weekend. And because of that, there's going to be some skips in your data set. So maybe if you are doing a trend, for example, you would see empty dates in those particular locations. And we don't want that. We want those dates to all appear. We don't want the dates to be skipping. So that's why we need a calendar table. And one way of creating a calendar table is by using a calculated table, which is calendar auto. Another way of creating a calculated table is people have actually come up with different ways of creating a calendar table because that's actually something that's actually very, very important in Power BI for things to work properly. So so that's the app that I sent us, which is the bravo.bi that I asked us to download. If we download that, we can also use it to create a calendar table. Okay, but for now, I just wanted to introduce us to DAX. So I'm already going off the line. So sorry about that. So yeah, so let's just do the introduction to DAX, which is DAX is a language that we use for calculations in Power BI. There are three types of calculations that we can do with DAX. One is a calculated table, which we have tested by creating this calendar table. After we create this calendar table, one thing we are supposed to do is that we right click and we select mark as date table. Because why do we select mark as date table? Because by default in the background, Power BI has created its own calendar table. So, but we don't want it to use that. So, we, we ask it to use the one that we created. So, we mark it as date table. Okay. So, to enable the creation of date related visuals, tables, and quick measures using these tables data, mark it as a date table. So, we are going to mark the date table. For us to have a date table, we must have a column that includes dates, which is simply date, and then we save. So we are probably still going to come back to this topic on calendars and times. But for now, I just wanted us to understand the concept of a calculated table. The second thing we have is the concept of a calculated column. So instead of creating an entire table, a calculated column will simply create a column inside a table. Note keyword. A calculated column lives inside a. Now, it may seem banal, or maybe I'm just repeating something that is very obvious that a column should actually live inside a table, but we will understand the reason why I'm emphasizing that when we come to measures. So, let's say we want to create a calculated column. In our calendar table, for example, we have just date
Assalamu
here.
alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Sorry, so sorry. Please, could you please mute Adeyemo Usman from your hand? I think it's affecting the this thing. Thank you.
How do we do that? Okay. Okay. So thank you for that. So we have our calendar table, and you can see we only have dates here. If you can remember yesterday, one thing we did with our dates column was that we created year, we created month, we created day. We could do that in Power Query. It's actually better to do that in Power Query, but we can also do it right here in with DAX. So what I'm going to now do, so the first time we created our new column, new table from here, we can also do it right from the top of the table here by right clicking and we select new column. So the same thing will happen where our formula bar will come up and we call it year. So we want to create year. We write a column, a function which also exists in Excel, which is very simple. We write year and we choose date. So anytime we are referencing something in DAX, it's going to show us both the name of the table that we are selecting the column from and the name of the column. So we are selecting year from our dates column in our calendar table. So our function is year, date is the name of our column, and calendar is the name of the table we are picking it from. So just like that, we are already writing DAX. Not so difficult, is it? So we create a new column called year. So we can still create another new column from here. We want to also create the same thing for month and day. So the same thing, create new column. We have month. And create select month. Put it into brackets. Calendar. We want to select date. And we finally want to create one for day, which is day into brackets, calendar date. So now we've seen how a calculated table works and how a calculated column Finally, we are going to go into what we call measures. Now, pay attention. Measures are something that is like, I would say, is more or less quite unique to Power BI. Um, maybe, yeah, for the most part, it's actually quite unique to Power BI. So I think we can also, I think, yeah, I think other BI tools too tend to have measures, but this is something that is completely different from Excel. So, what is a measure? A measure is a calculation that we do based on our data, but it doesn't live inside a table. That's the major distinction between calculated column and measures. If you create a measure, we are going to create it exactly the same way we do a table, but it's not going to add anything to our data model. It's like a calculation that we do in the air. It's like a calculation that is in our head. We are just telling Power BI that every time I select this measure, I want you to do the calculation. So at that moment, when we are creating the measure, Power BI does not do the calculation. It just stores the formula. So let's do an example of one calculation. Like yesterday, what we did, okay, we did the calculation of our costs, which was sales minus profit, right? So I can do the same thing here. Then I'll come to my sales table and I select measure. So now I want cost, which is sales minus profit. I can select cost. Then I want to select sales. Now, one thing we are going to notice is that um, for our columns which have this sign, which when we are creating a measure actually does an aggregation. So we can't just select sales. If you are thinking in your normal Excel sense, we are thinking of a single cell, you should be able to select the sales from a single cell, but you can't do that. You can only do the aggregation of the sales if you are doing a measure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this cost, both using measure and both using column so that we can see the difference. So let's say we use a cost column. Let me go back. Let me go back and create a new column instead of a new measure. If I create cost column and I try to select sales, it's going to come up. And now I try to select profit. Why? The reason why this comes up is that it's working the same way it used to work in Excel. So let me see. So when I create this and I just do a select, what happens? The column goes, it is part of our table. It goes into our data model. It goes to each row and calculates the sales minus profit. But a measure does not work like that. A measure looks at the entire column and works with the entire column directly. It aggregates. It doesn't work on it. It doesn't create something inside our column. So let me create a cost measure. I name it cost measure. And this time we are going to aggregate. We are going to say a sum of sales. So once I select an aggregation function, you can see that now our columns are coming up because this is something we can do a calculation based on. I want to select sum of sales minus sum of profits. Remember, we have to select our table name first and then our column name. So what happens here? It works with the entire column, it aggregates everything. Now, if we come back to our data, our table view, our cost measure, here you can see it in our data model, right? But if we look in this our table view, we cannot see our cost measure anywhere. Because, like I said, a measure is a virtual calculation. We've only defined it. We've not yet told Power BI to calculate it. So there is nothing inside this cost measure other than the formula that we wrote. It's just there, just existing. It doesn't add to our data model. Unlike our cost column, which when we created the column, everything was already, the calculation is already done and it becomes a part of our model. So the reason why I'm going into all of this detail, one thing that we also learn about DAX is that 90% of the time, 95% of the time, we want to create measures, not columns. Why? Because like I told us before, adding every new column we are adding to our data set is making our data sets bigger. It's making Power BI do more work. It's going to make our reports slower. So the only time that we want to use calculated columns are the times when measures cannot work. For example, in our calendar table, we want to create month. We want every single date to have its own individual month. So that's why we create a calculated column. So calculated columns are actually more intuitive as far as our Excel is concerned. But performance-wise, they are not the best idea. So Power BI was not, Power BI is designed to work more with measures because measures don't add anything to our data model. They don't create new overhead for Power BI to work with. So if we do a calculation, so if we do something here now, let's say we want to see cost per state. So we go to our location table and we select state. I want it to be a bar chart actually. So we have this map, I'll just change this into a bar chart and I will make it smaller. If we add our cost column to the x-axis, it's going to do sum of cost. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing again in a new chart, add state, add our cost measure. What do we see? We see that we have exactly the same thing. So it's giving us exactly the same information. The only difference is that this measure does not add to our data model. So most of the time when you're working in DAX, you want to be creating measures. So when we have this measure, what does Power BI do? It just keeps the formula, puts it in this place. The reason why we just have the measure is so that we don't have to write the formula every time we want to create a new chart. So the moment we select it to add it to this model, Power BI will do the calculation on the fly. But it doesn't have the calculation, it doesn't have the data stored in the model from the beginning. So it only does the
Please, sorry to cut you.
yeah.
Please, can you take this measure again? Sorry.
Okay. So to create the measure, that's just one the process of creating the measure, right? To
Yeah.
create the measure, we have to we have to aggregate it. I'll just copy the function. No, we cannot say sales is the primary key. So please, if anytime you want to ask questions, please, it's better for us to use the to unmute ourselves and ask because I'm focusing on the chat that I'm creating, so I can't see whatever is going on in the chat box until I actually open Zoom. So, but what I'm just saying, so yeah, we cannot say sales is the primary key. If you remember my explanation of sales, it is that sorry, of a primary key, it's that each item appears only once in the table, and we don't have a primary key for a fact table. We don't need a primary key for a fact table. So If you want to create a primary key for a fact table, all you have to do is what we did yesterday when we created an index column. I don't know if anyone remembers, it's not really that important. But if you create an index column, it's going to assign a data, a unique number to each row. So if we have that, that will be our, what do they call it? That will be our primary key. But we don't need a primary key for a fact table. So we don't have a primary key there. We only have primary keys for our what do they call it? For our dimension tables. So I've copied and pasted the measure for our cost in our data in the Zoom chat, so you can copy it and create your cost measure if you want to create the cost measure. So yeah, that is our introduction to DAX. DAX is an entire world on its own, but on a very simple basis. That's something that we have in DAX. So these are the things that we have in DAX. DAX is basically used for calculations. At the most basic level, many of its calculations are the same things that we already have in Excel, but the difference is that now we are working with columns instead of with cells. And then we have three types of calculations we can create with a DAX measure, with DAX, and the first is measure. So most of the time we talk about DAX, we're always talking about DAX measures. So that's always become a synonym more or less. So the first is that the first what we create most of the time is measures, which is basically just an aggregated calculation in Power BI, and it doesn't add anything to our model. It only calculates on the fly. When we add it to a visual, that's when it's going to calculate it. On the other hand, a column is calculated the moment we write the formula for the column. It's going to create a new column. It's going to add it to our model. And a table does the same thing, but it creates an entire table instead of um, just a column. So that
Okay.
is Walaikum
Alright.
Walaikum
Yeah,
salam.
yeah. These visuals that we are talking about, can we export it to Word document?
Can you export the visuals? You can usually copy it. I'm not sure you can paste it outside. Usually, if you want to export it into a document, you can. I think you can actually save your Power BI, your your report. I think you should be able to save it as a PDF, if I remember right. Okay, no, you can't save it as a PDF. I don't think. Okay, you have to export, so you can export it into a PDF. So you export the entire report as a PDF. Otherwise, if you want to save it into a document, then maybe you have to do a screenshot and then move it into a document. But then one of the major advantages of Power BI is the interactivity. So usually, what you want to do is either to send the Power BI file, which is the PBIX file, or you want to share the link. So now let's go into creating our visuals. But just before we do that, we are going to create a new measure called total sales. Why are we creating a new measure called total sales? Well, I'll just say in simple format, okay, I would just say it's part of best practice. I won't really be able to explain all of the best practices and why, because I think that has taken a lot of our time actually. So easily when you add sales to a visual, it will automatically perform the sum. But for the sake of number one, for the sake of other measures that we are going to create in the future, that's one major reason why it's good to simply have your total sales as a measure. So one rule that people will tell you about Power BI is that you don't want to ever pick up a measure, which is a fact. You don't want to drag your fact as a column into a table like this, like I've been doing actually. Like you don't want to do that because you are giving Power BI the entire column. You are putting your column into your visual, which makes the visual heavier. So what you want to put is a measure where you only have the aggregated value inside. And it's also useful because when you start working with Power BI, you are going to create a lot of DAX measures and you are going to create measures that are based on other measures. So you are going to need to have a sum of sales. But for this we're not going to work too much on that. We're not going to work too much on DAX. We're just going to create, I think, a single measure. I don't think we'll create a second measure. Yeah, we'll only create we'll create one for sales, which is total sales. I can call it total sales value. And it's as simple as an Excel formula where we could say sum and we select sales. The column is called sales. And yeah, and the table is called sales. And then we create a second measure, which is total quantity. And we want it to be the sum of quantity. So I'm just going to create a new page. We'll put that.
Facilitator, sir, I think someone has a question. Person is asking what's the importance of DAXs.
What's the importance of DAXs? Yeah, I think I've explained it. DAX is what we use to do all of our calculations in Power BI. So, I mean, I think we've been using DAX. We've used it to create our calendar table. We are using it to create our sales measures. And when you are doing complex calculations, basically you are going to need DAX a lot. At the most basic level, you can avoid DAX as much as possible, and you can use very simple DAX formulas which are similar to Excel formulas. But DAX is essential to creating more complex reports. For example, if we want to do time intelligence, for example, when we want to calculate like year-on-year sales, I mean that's something that we do very commonly, right? So to do something like that, um, you need to use DAX. So now I just want to go to the building of our visualizations so that we can create our dashboard. So I'm going to start by creating a line chart because I want to show us the trend of our sales. Okay, so one thing I forgot to do is that our calendar table, I forgot to add it to our model. So we want our calendar table to be part of our model instead of our other dates. So I'm going to remove this relationship. You can make it inactive. I can make it inactive and I can hide it. So I don't want to use this date table. I want to use the one I created using the calendar table. So I can hide it. And then we want to create a relationship between date and other dates. So it's a one-to-many relationship between date and other date. And we see. So we don't need this date anymore. We are using this calendar now. So now because we are trying to create a time series, so we can put in our date on the x-axis And we can put in our total sales, which is our measure on the y-axis. So like that, we have our total sales. Or if we prefer, we can also decide to use, let's say we want to show it month by month instead of the entire date. So I'm going to remove the date and just leave the month. So I want to show the breakdown by year. I want to show the trend in each month and in each year. So I can add year. I will add it to this legend area. And now we have our total sales value by month and by year. So that's one visual that we want to have. Then next we want to show, okay, what are the customer segments, the different customer segments, what are the sales in each customer segment. So come to our customer table, we can select segment and we can select our total sales value. So we keep using this same total sales value that we created, this measure, we keep using it. And let's say I want this to be a donut chart. We have this. Then let's say I want to see our sales by state. Let's say I want to, okay, which region, okay, which states have the most sales. Let's do by region instead of by states. And we can also add our total sales value. So by default, right? So by default, it shows as a table. So like I showed us before, we have a table and we want to convert it into a different data type. Once our chart is already selected, we can just select a different chart type. And now we have our total sales by region. And then what else can we try to look at? Let's say we also want to see maybe the most popular products subcategories. You can also turn this into a bar chart. You want to see it by total sales value. So one thing we can notice here is that this sales by subcategories is actually a lot, and we have to scroll through it to see it. So we can say, okay, maybe they are not really interested in seeing all of the sales values. Maybe we are only interested in certain sales. Then we can decide to filter. Let's say we just want to see the top 5 most popular subcategories. So how do we do that? We come to filters. So this is another entire thing that we also need to explore on our own actually, to spend a lot of time and see how it works. But we can filter by subcategory by default. You can already see that there is a filter by subcategory here. So we can select, okay, maybe we want to see only accessories. So you can select so there are 3 types of filter types. We have the basic filtering, we have the advanced filtering. I'm not going to go into detail of all of these. Well, we can look at that on our own later. And we also have what we call top N filtering. So top N filtering allows us to show, okay, we want to see only the top 5 values. So show items, we can select if we want to see the top items or actually the bottom items. We want to see just the top 5. So top 5 items by what? We want to see the top 5 best selling items that have the most sales. values. So we are going to drag in our sales value and put it under the data field, and then select apply filter. And just like that, we have only our top 5 values. So as usual, one thing, this is more of data visualization, is that many times we actually want to, we want to edit our titles to be more reflective of what we have in the data instead of just leaving them by default. Um, so I'm going to edit our titles. How can we edit our titles? We come to format your visual. So I have this visual selected. I'll come to format your visual. You come under general and you can change the title. Okay, I want to just show top 5 categories. Top 5 subcategories. And okay, we want to also see sales by region. Sales by region. We want to see, okay, sales by segment. And the same thing, we can say sales trend for by year. So yeah, so one thing I like to do, which is in terms of data visualization, is that sometimes, especially when we have legends like this, it can be a bit difficult for someone to have to come here and look at, okay, 2023, which color is 2022, you come back again, which color is 2021. So one thing we can do is label the data. So because 2023 is, so we can add our data labels. Where is it? Data labels. Okay, we don't want data labels actually shows the value of the data, but we have series labels. The series labels, like at the end of each line, it automatically shows 20 the year on top of the line. So that way you don't have to look at the legend and look back every time. We can edit the series label and the series position. I actually don't like this. I want it to show directly on top of the line. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it like this. So, but like I did for the other charts, I showed us before that we can edit the exact lines. We can give them different colors. So, if someone is looking at this data set, which is last year's data set, it stops at September anyway. But if I'm looking at this data, I'm really looking for 2023, and I want to see how we performed each month compared to the other years. So, but this is actually very noisy. So, since I know that people are not that interested in the other years, what they are really more interested in is to just see 2023. I can edit 2023 and give it a different color. Okay, sorry, I'm not.
So there's a question.
Yeah.
There's a question. Someone is asking a question about background changing.
About
Person
backgrounds.
said,
So
can we change?
yes, we can change the background. So on this, so here we have selected a particular chart. If we want to edit the background, we click on the background and select just the background. And then we have here, you can see the, if you click here, you can see the visualization. You can format your report page. So you can easily just change the background. Either you can change the background color, for example. Transparency is 100%. You can change the background color to black, or you can upload the wallpaper image. You can upload something. Although generally, I don't advise using backgrounds for data visualization. In most cases, it doesn't work fine because in this particular case, you can see that our chart is actually covering the background, so you cannot even really see anything. And if you want to see something, you have to make the chart transparent. So the background tends to conflict with with your data. And if you are doing data visualization, you want the person to focus on the data. You don't want the data to be fighting with your graphics, with your other graphics. So any graphic you're doing with your data visualization should be enhancing it. You should not be fighting with your data. So I'm just going to come here. I'm going to remove it. Okay. So I want
So
everything.
please, let's fill our attendance. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. Please, let's fill our attendance, and class is going to end in the next 10 minutes so that our facilitator can rest the speed of marathon teaching. So please, let's fill our attendance.
Ah, wow. It's already 11. I hope today's session was not too stressful, sharp. I was trying to I was trying to go into detail with the whole modeling and DAX thing because those are like the background to our models. Creating the visualization is the easy part, to be honest. As far as creating visualization is concerned, all you have to do is to drag and drop something and create the visualization. Maybe you need to learn about visualization best practices in order to do it right. But the most important thing about data visualization, which is the difference between you as a data analyst and a designer, is that a designer is just trying to make things look good. But for you as a data analyst, you are trying to ensure that your numbers are correct. Nobody will clap for you, no matter how beautiful your visualization is, if the numbers inside are incorrect. And so the way to ensure that your numbers are correct is by paying attention to your data transformation, paying attention to your data modeling. Those are the things that will really affect how correct your data will be at the end of the day. Yeah, so and that is your number one focus as a data analyst. So I'm going to bring in filters so that our users can actually interact with our chats. So we have sales by year, we have the sales trend. So I can remove the legend of this year. Okay, maybe I can leave it. Okay, I can actually leave it. So let's say we want to add filters because we want to make it interactive, remember. So I'm going to come to these visuals and we have this slicer here, which allows us to add a filter directly on the page. We select slicer and I want my users to be able to filter by year. So which field do I want here? I want the year field here. So you can select different types of slicers. One is this timeline slicer. So if I shift this, you can see that it affects my data. If I shift it like this, it's interactive. It shows only 2021 to 2023, 2022. But since we only have a year here, I don't want to put, I don't want it to be a slicer, like, I don't want it to be a slider. So there are different types of slicer. This is slider settings. Okay, slider. No, where did they change this thing? Okay, yes, style between. So you can have a vertical list that just lists out all your values as checkboxes. You can have a drop down. You can have a tile, which if you saw my this thing yesterday, this was the style I used the most for that other visualization that I shared with us yesterday. Where you can just select the different styles.
Someone
Um,
looking.
but I want a drop down here. Yeah.
So I want to ask a question. How do you do top five subcategories?
So the top five, we do that by filtering. When we select here, we have this filter pane, and automatically from here, I want to filter subcategory. So I click here and I select the filter type. You can have basic filtering, you can have advanced filtering, you can have top end. So the top end, you just select the number of items you want to see, and then you put in the value you want it to sort by. So if I tell you, okay, these are the top five, I'm like, okay, top five, is it that they have the top five population, or they have the top five number of customers, or the top five sales? So we want top five sales. So that's why we added total sales value.
Thank you.
So yeah. So I was creating our filters, and I said, okay, we've created a filter for year. Maybe we also want to create a filter for region so that we can look at each region separately. Um, okay, it automatically comes as a table. I'm going to change it into a slicer. And here we have our checkboxes. Um, then maybe I also want a slicer for our categories so that people can interact with the data in different ways. We also have a slicer for categories. So, and that's it. We have a filter here. What did we filter? Why do we have a filter by year? So I can click in here. We have a filter here. Mm. You can clear selections from here. What's wrong? Okay, this is weird. I think this is actually a bug. Okay. So yeah, just like that, we have all our charts. So let's say we want a title for our dashboard. We can easily just put in a title by creating a text box. So you come up here in the home section, you select text box, and it's simply called a sales dashboard. I'm going to make this bigger because I want it to be a title. Select the font size.
All right. All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So I hope people I hope we've been able to. I'm sorry I'm interrupting. Right, but I think we've overspent our time, yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm just counting up. No problem. So I believe up to this point we are all together, right?
Yeah, thank you.
So
Yes,
yeah, it's
very much.
so yeah, I mean, not much time to deal with the formatting, but at least we were able to get to the point of creating the charts, talk about many important best practices when it comes to modeling and when it comes to using DAX. So at the end of the day, we can't cover everything in one day, but I hope that with the amount of information that we have, we can we can create this dashboard, something as simple as this on our own.
All right.
Yes,
Uh,
inshallah.
All right,
thank you
Jazakallah
very
khair.
much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I hope
Okay.
everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, great. So I'm sorry, the network has been really dealing with me too. So, but I have like, yeah. So this is one of the reasons why we keep stating that you should fill the attendance, because the video for this class is going to probably be sent directly to those who attended the class. However, yeah, the video is going to be made available for everyone eventually. But please, please just fill the attendance. There are so much more benefits to it. I really thank our facilitator for taking his time to give us this marathon class. I mean, it's something to teach you how to do something, but it is another thing to sit down and be patient to teach you all through time without even noticing that time has gone past. I didn't even want to interrupt a lot of times because I was speaking one or two things there. So thank you very much once again to take time, like for taking time out of your very busy schedule to give us your beautiful part of knowledge.
It's my pleasure. I hope that I've been able to teach something that is useful. Hopefully, we are going to take time to actually do this on our own. At the end of the day, like I also said yesterday, it's not everything that we are going to get from courses and online. A lot of it we are going to get it by exploring on our own. So please
That's
let's
true.
ensure that we spend time to explore. I will also link us to some resources, especially to go in deeper on some of the basic concepts that I tried to explain, which I'm sure I didn't explain very well enough. So I will try to link us to those resources so that we can use them. And for our date table, for our calendar table, I didn't I don't know if I explained enough the importance of the calendar table, although maybe it's when you start exploring and run into issues that you're going to really understand it. But it's also a good idea to just use the best practices, even if you don't fully understand it. You can try to read about it to understand it. But it's a good idea to also just get used to using the best practices so that you don't even run into issues in the first place. And an easy way so that we don't have to go through the headache of creating DAX and all of that for our calendar table is to use the bravo.bi plugin that I shared with us. So if you download it, you can follow the instructions on how to create a calendar table there.
Where are we going to find that, sir?
I've put the link in chat.
All right.
So it helps us to automatically create a calendar table that already follows like the best practices.
Can you send the link again?
So I've sent the link bravo.bi. So when we install it, we can we can link it to our chat. And so when you come into Power BI, if you want to access it, you come to external tools and you are going to find it here after you install it. So I have some of these other external tools. Over time, when you start working with with Power BI, you may actually get into using all these other external tools too for different reasons. But I think for now, this Bravo will be is useful for the sake of creating a calendar table. I used to have another method of creating a more complex calendar table, but this Bravo is much more simpler because it does everything for you. So you can you can use that.
Jazakumullah khairan.
You want to finish that tomorrow?
Please, for last thing, this external tool is not in my own something.
Yeah,
It ends with
yeah,
L.
yeah, because you don't have any external tools yet. So you have to. So after you install your Bravo BI, it will ask you to connect directly to Power BI. So once you give it access to
Okay.
your Power BI, the external tools section will appear.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jazakumullah khairan, sir.
You want to finish that conversation? So if anyone has any questions, I'm still here for the next 30 minutes, I guess.
You talked about one link now. I've checked the group chat. I did not see it there.
I sent it to the group chat earlier, and I just typed it in the Zoom chat, bravo.bi. You can even just type it in your
What
browser.
of us? What of us with MacBook?
For those with MacBook, I have no idea. To be honest, MacBook is not the best. It's not the best place to use Power BI.
Sorry, I think you can use Power
I have
BI.
sent it to the WhatsApp group chat too.
Okay, I thought he was asking about the Bravo.bi for MacBook.
Okay.
But oh, okay.
Let me see. I don't know. I don't know if they have for Mac. Download for Mac.
I mean, installing Power BI.
Okay,
Power
installing
BI.
the app itself. Yeah, there's a guide. There's a guide. There's a guide on the group that I shared earlier. See if I can forward it again so that you can
Is
see.
installing it on MacBook. How was
So I forwarded the document on how to run Power BI on Mac. So you can just use the easiest option that they put in the this time. There
Please,
is
can
no.
you share in the chat here? Or because they have not added me to the WhatsApp group since I don't know.
No, it's a PDF file. I have it on my phone. I don't have it on. But let me see if I can just put the link because it's actually there's a link to a particular website where you can. Okay, just use parallels.com. So once you go there, it can help you to you install a kind of a virtual machine. So you'll be installing basically, yeah, installing a Windows OS on your MacBook. So because Power BI only runs on Windows OS, so you can then put your so you can use your Power BI from there.
Oh, Assalamu
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
It's under that Bravo stuff. I went there now. I saw so many options there. Which one would you recommend, sir?
On the website,
Yes, I saw self-contained, recommended, self-contained users.
yeah, yeah, just follow the recommended one.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
So once you come into Bravo, there are different things that you can use it for. So the first thing you do is to attach it to Power BI desktop to show you the different reports that you have open. You can select it and it automatically connects to that report. Then you come to manage dates. So from this manage dates, this is where you can create your um, where you can create your calendar date table directly using Bravo. So you may have to watch this video so that you can disable your auto dates time. I'm just going to do that directly so that you can watch the video to learn how to do this. Don't spend too much time going through it step by step. But once you do that, okay. Oh, wait, because I already created a dates table inside. So it doesn't so it's not going to work. So but yeah, we are expecting so if you're going to use this to create your calendar table, then it's advisable that you did not already create a different calendar table. But you have to delete the ones you already have and then it will so that you can create it directly. Sadia, I can't hear you. Perhaps maybe you can try typing in chat.
Okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
I've downloaded the Bravo for Power BI. So should I choose connect to Power BI service? I'm trying to install it.
It should show you connect Power BI desktop. You're working on Power BI desktop.
Okay, Power BI desktop. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We never got to talking about Power BI service.
It brought the option active reports on Power BI, dataset on powerbi.com. So I should take the first option.
Yeah, you should select the report you're working on.
Okay. 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 Okay, I think it has opened something. Untitled Power BI editor query. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, some resources I wanted to share with us.
Sorry to disturb. Yet I didn't see that external tool.
Even
Oh,
after touching it.
yes. Oh, I'm supposed to close the Power BI software and
You can try closing it and opening it again. Okay, if you go to
okay.
Thank you very much, sir. So that brings us to the end of this class. I'm sorry, my network I will keep more than usual. Thank you very much for listening. So please fill the attendance, and call is going to end in the next few minutes, just for people who are not attending.
Scientist, right? Yeah, scientist. But I've got the chance for 10 years and I've meticulously analyzed the Quran step by step. Everything is done. I'm done. Believe me, no human being will be able to write a book like the Quran in the 7th century. Impossible. He said, not Muhammad, not the Sahaba. No. You can't write the information in the Quran. This is for anyone to write a book like the Quran. That person has to have an insight on a private mind. How are we going to get that by the mind? This is for anyone to write a book like the Quran. That person has to have an insight on a private mind, which is impossible because the information in the Quran is beyond the 7th century.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله.